Hello. Today we are going to talk about why speaking confidence is the thing that you really, really want, but it's not the thing that you need. I know that can feel really triggering, but I promise you it's not the thing that you need. But it is definitely something that you want, and it's definitely worth something finding it as well. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Have you ever looked at women, and particularly if they're senior in your organization, and thought, wow, they're so confident, they're so competent as speakers, it's really easy for them? It is really easy. Or perhaps you are one of those senior women yourself, and you're like, you know that you have stepped up into this very senior role, you are speaking to people on a daily basis, you can do it, and you can look and sound competent, but you're having to work incredibly hard to keep it all going underneath. That you're kind of that swan, you're looking all graceful on the outside, but actually there's a huge amount of emotional work going on the inside. Now, often when we feel like that, it's because we've been under the misapprehension that once we get into these senior roles, getting that senior role will give us the confidence that we need to feel confident and to sound confident. We will become confident. Unfortunately, that is not the case. When we are promoted and we don't feel that confidence, most of what we're doing, we're operating out of a sense of fear, a sense of anxiety that we are about to get found out, that fraudulent, that imposter syndrome feeling of like, they're all going to realize that I'm having to work really incredibly hard here. And I'm going to talk about why that is in a minute. So today we are going to talk about the things that you can do that will help you find confidence. But know that confidence is the byproduct of the work. It isn't the thing itself, but it's brilliant when you find it, and it's so helpful for the rest of your careers. So why is this important? Why is it important for us to understand what confidence is and how we find it? Well, the thing is that we make decisions, we base our decisions on whether we do or we don't do something, on whether we feel confident or not. So if we're not feeling super confident, then we might not apply for that job. We may not ask our boss for promotion. We may not put ourselves forward to be part of that task force on that particular new and really interesting project. So we base our decisions on whether or not we're feeling confident. And if we are reducing our ability to say yes to things, or our willingness to put ourselves out there and do things that might be a little bit challenging, we are reducing our visibility. We're just not out there. We're not seen in the same way. And that really, really impacts on our career development. And to be honest, it's kind of wonky thinking to think that, well, when I get promoted, then I'm going to feel confident. When this happens to me, when I get a pay rise, I'm going to feel so much more confident. I'm going to feel really confident when I move to this new company, because we can start to think that it's a kind of when then thinking. It's like, when this happens, I'm going to feel really, really super confident. And so we spend time pursuing the wrong things. And then we get really disappointed when it doesn't work. And those wrong things can be things like perfecting our deck. They can be procrastinating over ideas. We're not doing the right things. We feel like if we get things perfect, then we are going to feel really, really confident. It's actually a self-defeating cycle, that, because we cannot ever be perfect. It's not possible to be perfect. So we'll never reach perfection. And so it's a bit self-defeating. But I'll talk about that in another video. That's another video. So we spend this time pursuing the wrong thing. And we turn down the things that might be really useful. So we may turn down something like being on a panel. Someone might ask us to speak on a panel, and we're like, oh no, I'll do that when I feel a bit more confident. We turn it down. We give lots of other reasons, but we turn it down because we don't feel confident in our ability to deliver in a way that measures up to this idea of perfection that we have of ourselves, or perfection of what someone in my position should be doing. And if we don't do the work, that has to happen beforehand, we don't find that confidence. So we can find ourselves in the positions of some of these women that I was talking about earlier, where we are promoted because we're very competent at our job, we're very good at the one-to-one relationships, we get the results that our organization needs, and so we get promoted. Now we assume that we're going to feel confident when we get that promotion because, look, everyone else believes in us now, so surely I believe in myself. But it doesn't actually work out that way, not for most people. Or sometimes it does work out, but it's inconsistent. It doesn't consistently stay with us, that sense of confidence. Because the reality is that confidence is our ability to believe in ourselves, that we can cope, whether we succeed or whether we fail. Now, I'm going to get rid of that word fail right here and now because I don't like it. It conjures up all kinds of negativity and it's just not a helpful idea. So I'm going to go to this concept. It's a Jewish concept of there not being any sin. So sin doesn't exist in the Jewish theology. We only ever miss the mark. And I think this is such a lovely concept. It's not you're good or you're bad. It's like, look, you were aiming for there. You didn't quite get it right and we landed here. What can we do to make that better? How can we avoid that happening for next time? So really, I want to reframe that. So confidence is this idea that you can cope if you are incredibly successful, and you can cope if you miss the mark, if it doesn't quite turn out in the way that you wanted it to. That is what real confidence is. Because it's organic, it's movable, it moves with you as you move through your career. It's easy for us to be misled and to make decisions when we're not feeling confident, all based out of fear. And I'm going to talk about two different kinds of fear now, because I think it's important for us to establish and know that within us, there's two different kinds of fear that's going to be helpful and fear that is not so helpful. And this is a concept that Tara Moore wrote about, and I love it. And it's another Jewish one as well. But if we go back to that idea of not feeling confident, fear drives our decisions. Fear drives this. I'm not confident yet, so I'm not going to speak on that panel. I'm not confident enough to do a TV interview or a radio interview or whatever it might be. I'm not confident enough. The reason that we say no is because we fear that we're going to be found to be imperfect in that role. So women have a very strong desire to be perfect. We have a very strong feeling that we need to get things right within ourselves. And there is a societal expectation of some of that too, but it's an internal driver to get things right, because we are fearful that if we are found to be imperfect, to not get things right, we're going to suffer acute shame. And we want to stay as far away from shame as possible. So our fear is of shame. Now, this is where Tara's ideas around fear come in. So there's two kinds of fear. And I want to talk about the first one first, which is pachad. So pachad is imagined or perceived or projected fear. So we imagine that if we get things wrong, we're going to feel shame. And that is going to be so hard to handle in our bodies and in our lives that we avoid doing things. So pachad keeps us stuck. It's the kind of fear that keeps us kind of stagnant. It's like, well, if I don't do that, then I don't need to worry about it. I'm just going to stay here and it's going to be okay. And it's also the fear that drives this wonky thinking. It's like, well, when I feel confident, then I'll have a go at it, because then it'll be okay. Because then I know I'm not going to stuff it up. I don't need to fear the shame, because I'm going to be safe. So it's the kind of fear that really, really keeps us stuck. And it stops us from taking up job interviews. It stops us from doing interviews. It stops us from being on panels. It stops us from writing social media posts or making videos if you're an entrepreneur. It stops us from really expanding into what we're capable of, and keeps us stuck in this very, very safe space. And it really feeds that if, then, when mentality. It's like, when I feel a bit more like this, then I'm going to do such and such. And it's not very helpful. And it isn't that kind of fear isn't going to help us find confidence. We aren't going to find that perfection and then find the confidence. It doesn't work that way, because we're not doing the things that we need to do to find the confidence. So can you see how we kind of get stuck in this cycle of not moving forward and then being frustrated that we haven't found confidence? Yeah. A couple of years ago, I was working with an absolutely lovely client called Lisa. Not her real name, I've changed it, but she was very bright, really, really good at her job, but very anxious that she didn't get things wrong. So she worked in a quite highly male-dominated industry, and it meant that she felt a pressure to get things right all the time. She didn't want to be seen, she was relatively young for her position, she didn't want to be seen as incompetent, she didn't want to be seen as someone who didn't really know her subject area. So she would script everything, from team meetings to client meetings. She would script everything out. She was very driven by data and by goals. So she wanted to get things right. She'd do all her research. She'd make sure she had all the up-to-date numbers. She knew her stuff inside out, but she wanted to drive that goal forward. So what would happen with her scripting was she would get into a kind of a death grip with her script. She would hold on to that script and she would stick to the script. And so she would become a little bit monotone. It was very difficult for her once she started down a track to come off a track if a client or a team member asked her another question. And so she would get very stuck on this sort of one track. I started at the beginning, I'm going to go on to the end type talking. And she became quite monotone. We lost her personality in the process. And she was a delightful individual. And it just wasn't coming across because she was fearful of that shame. So she came to me saying, I need to feel more confident. I want to feel more confident about the way I speak. I would love to be able to speak off the cuff, and I cannot do that. It's just not possible for me. I need to be scripted. I need to be prepared for every eventuality, which meant she was taking up huge amounts of time before any presentation, team meetings. She was having to do hours and hours and hours of prep, and prep that was meant she was really reducing any risk of her not knowing and getting it wrong. And it was exhausting for her. It was a bit frustrating for her team because they didn't really feel like they were getting enough information from her in a very organic way. And she wasn't developing the rapport with the clients that she really wanted and knew that she was capable of. So, as I said, she came to me saying, right, I want to find confidence. How do we find confidence? I was like, okay, let's just park that one over there for now. And we're going to focus on these things first of all. So the very first thing we started to do was to examine her expertise and her relationship with her expertise. How comfortable was she saying, I'm an expert in this area? It turned out that she wasn't very comfortable. So we really had to work on that first of all. Then we worked on her self-trust, trusting that she could cope if she knew the answer or she didn't know the answer, if she succeeded or if she missed the mark. And once we'd built up this sense of expertise and really were much more rational, so we weren't in this pahad kind of projected fear about her expertise, we were really it was fact, not feeling about her expertise, and she had a greater sense of self-trust. Then we were able to start working on the skills, building up the skills and providing the opportunities where she could practice those skills. And what did we find? Confidence. Confidence came as a byproduct to doing all that other work, first of all, particularly the mindset work. That's where the shifts really, really started to happen. And the result, by the end of the coaching program, she was able to deliver an absolutely knockout piece of thought leadership that was off the cuff, totally unscripted. She'd done some thinking, she had a few bullet points, but she was able to produce this piece of work through just speaking, just knowing, leaning into her expertise, leaning into her self-trust, knowing she knew enough about this subject area to talk and to share some ideas about where her particular area of business was going to. So at that point, what she stepped into was a different kind of fear. And this is what Tara Moore calls yira fear, which is like a kind of awe feeling, a feeling of like, oh, what my coach would call scare sighting. So this is just really like, whoa, exciting. Because you're in that sense of knowing you're an expert, you're in that sense of trusting yourself, and you're expanding your competence at the same time, because you're doing things that are just a little bit more challenging. You're stepping outside your comfort zone in ways that are stretching in a good way, so you don't feel like you're about to leap off, a cliff into a ravine, but you know that you are standing up near the edge. You've got your backpack on, your not your backpack, your parachute on. You've got your parachute on, and you can step off the edge safely, because you've got all the skills, you've got all the requirement, you've done the mindset work, you're in good hands. She stepped away from Bahad, this projected fear of feeling shame, into, oh my goodness, look what I can do. When I really put my mind to it, look what I can do. So it is absolutely possible to find confidence. And she would tell you that she found it, she could feel it in her body. You could certainly hear it and see it in her body when she spoke. Completely different personality, much more personable, much more persuasive, much more present when she spoke, when she was doing it off the cuff, when she leaned into that self-trust. So let's look at the 5 things that Lisa and I worked on to help her find that confidence. It was what she wanted, but it wasn't what she needed when she joined. So these are the things that we looked at and we started to focus on with her. So first of all, it's about mindset work. So how much of an expert do you feel you are? Can you really lean into the idea of you being an expert? Can you say it out loud? So for some people to be able to just say, I'm an expert in X, is like, what? Really, really challenging. So if you have any physical reaction to the sentence, I'm an expert, it would suggest that you need to do some work in and around that. Take a look at your speaking. So can you own what you're really good at? Can you say, I'm really good at building rapport, or I'm brilliant at synthesizing information. So everyone's spoken, I synthesize it and I can replay it back in a condensed format. Are you fantastic at asking great questions? Are you good at making sure the voices in the room that are quiet get heard? What elements of communication and speaking are you already really good at, and are you owning those? And what are your growth areas in speaking? So what are the things you could be doing better, but you find a little bit tricky right now? And if you start to think about those things, you will be starting to do some of the mind work. And then I want you to ask yourself, do you trust yourself to succeed? And do you trust yourself if you miss the mark? So there's a really interesting one. So some people have a real reaction to the success bit, and some people have a reaction to the failure or missing the mark bit. So do you have a reaction to either of those? So by asking yourself those questions, having a really lovely deep dive into those kinds of things, journaling on them, asking questions. If you're an external verbal processor, go for a walk and talk to yourself. What comes up when you start to think about those things? And are there areas where you need to do a little bit more deeper work in order to really own your expertise and really own your sense of your ability to drive your success and to cope with any missing of the marks? The next bit is really looking at your relationship with your inner critic. So inner critic is the one that is going to keep you safe, stop you from stepping up into that yara fear, that awe fear, that like, whoa, look at me, look what I'm doing. So what is your inner critic saying? When is it saying it to you? How is it communicating with you? So we really want to be looking at what's your relationship with your inner critic. Is it toxic? Is it healthy? Where can we start to improve the relationship with the inner critic? And at the same time, how do we boost your inner mentor? Your inner mentor is the part of you that is your wise self, your wise old woman. She's been here for a very long time. She's seen it all before. She has the t-shirt. She knows what's necessary for you. So are you truthfully tuning into and listening to your inner mentor? Or are you ignoring those feelings when your gut is saying, no, this isn't right, don't do this? Are you just kind of stuffing it down and ignoring it? Because we can become very, very good at doing that. So What we're looking to do is tune down the inner critic and tune into and tune up the inner mentor. So we're listening to the things that are really helpful for us. So really the question here is, do you have a toxic or a non-toxic relationship with your inner critic? And how can you bolster and boost your relationship with your inner mentor? Then the practical tools. So as we said at the beginning, what are you doing in terms of speaking that is really, really working? How are you communicating with people that's really powerful? And can you do more of that? And what is the one thing that you could be working on to improve? So, for instance, for me, I can be quite assertive. So I know what I think about certain things, particularly when it comes to my business, or what I think might be the right ideas for driving things forward. And so I can become quite assertive. So the one thing that I'm working on at the moment is asking really good questions. So before I start to say what I think is appropriate, or what I think is where we should be heading with the business, I ask really good questions of my team to make sure that I've got all the information, all the perspectives, and then I add in mine as well. And often they're aligned and occasionally they're misaligned, and that's really helpful because we can have a much better, stronger, richer discussion for it. So what's the one communication element that you could be working on that is going to really help you improve your speaking? Now, for you, it could be things like pacing or pausing. Perhaps it's about not spending 40 hours doing a slide deck. Perhaps it is about bringing more of your authentic self to your presentations and your pitches and your speeches. What is the one thing that's really going to move the needle for you, and focusing on that one thing? And then the fifth thing, it's about beginning, right? Great speakers, great communicators, confident speakers are those that started. Okay, you don't have to be great to start. This is a Zig Ziglar quote. You don't have to be great to start, but to be great, you do have to start. It's really, really important. So this stage is really about finding those moments in life, those moments in business where you can start to stretch outside your comfort zone, start to do things, and they can be small things at first that are a little bit stretchy. So we're stepping into that era, that like, whoa, space, but you can cope with this. You don't have to take a great running leap to start with, but we do want to stretch ourselves just gradually, and then we just keep stretching. So we're always in that state of like, this is exciting, this is stretchy, I'm growing. Because if you don't hear from your inner critic, chances are we're in a state of comfort. We're not pushing ourselves, we're not challenging ourselves, and we're not growing as a result of that. So we talked about how confidence is definitely the thing that you want, and it is something you also need. It's definitely the thing you want, but it's not what you need to start with. It's not where you need to start. So if you go looking for confidence, you will not find it. I'm really sorry, but you just won't. There's other things, there's steps that we need to take in order to discover confidence. And we've looked at what those 5 steps are today. So the first one is that we really need to do that mindset work. We need to step into that sense of knowing who we are as an expert, what we have to offer, and making sure that we're using that expertise in the right ways as we're working. Then the next stage was looking at the inner critic and making sure we don't have a toxic relationship with our inner critic, making sure we're befriending our inner critic and tuning down some of the nonsense, the unhelpful ideas that the inner critic likes to spread. Then the third part is to tune up the inner mentor. So that's the wise woman within you who really knows her stuff and wants to do the right thing by you. So we need to tune her up, listen to her much more frequently, notice her in some cases. The next stage is working on your speaking skills. Accept and own what you're really good at already, and then choose one area to work on, whether that's pacing, pausing, bringing more of your authentic self to your speeches, whatever it might be, but work on one thing at a time. And then finally, it's about getting out there and starting. So find that stretchy thing, find that thing that's going to take you into your that sense of scarce-sightedness that's going to challenge you and grow you in lots of really exciting ways. And try and hold on to the sense of missing the mark. Yeah. So if things don't go well, you missed the mark and you learned stuff. And that's really, really important. So getting things wrong is where we learn. Yeah. It's where we learn how to do things much, much more effectively in the future. So hold on to what you did really, really well and focus on one thing you could do better next time. I hope you found today really useful. So we've been looking at why confidence is the thing you want, and you do need it, but it is not the thing that we need to start with. It's not where we need to start looking. If you go looking for confidence, you're unlikely to find it. I want to leave you with this. And it was something a client said to me after doing our leadership program. And she said, when I came onto this program, I expected to do exercises to understand what confidence was. I expected to do exercises to learn how to access confidence. I never thought that I would find confidence, that I would find it in my body, that I would feel it in my body. And that was just one of the most wonderful compliments that she could have given us. And the reason she found that confidence was because we started with the mind work. We did all the mindset work to start with. And then we started to build on building skills. And then we started to put on looking how to apply those skills, to put them into practice, to get feedback, to get sort of test and measure them in the workplace. What's working, what's not working, what feels authentic, what doesn't feel authentic. So the impact for her was when she left the program, she felt confidence. She felt confidence in her ability to succeed and to miss the mark and cope with both of those situations with equal grace. If you're interested in having some of that, of discovering that confidence in your body for yourself beyond what we've talked about today, then maybe you could be an ideal participant for the Influential Leadership for Women program. It is a selected program, so it's not for everybody. But if you'd like to have a conversation, please don't hesitate to sign up for a discovery call, and the link is below. If you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe. There's lots more coming your way. Take care. Bye-bye.